All right, Greg Everett, Catalyst Athletics, back again. This is number 5,876, I think. At least feels like it sometimes. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, so make sure you guys let me know if there are specific things you want to see or hear, and so we can try to get these or get those things in to these videos. So post comments on the YouTube, ideally. They get seen more than the Facebook ones. All right, so this is Alyssa here. She's doing a push press plus, I believe, a pause jerk complex. So she should pause in the bottom of this dip here, and then she's got to hold that split position for about 3 seconds. We just started a new training cycle, so this is largely a point in time where we're really focusing on kind of squat and pull strength, a lot of back and ab work, and then overhead strength. And so for the most part, that main group of people is doing a very similar cycle with some little variations on some of the exercises based on what they need. So for example, I think Alyssa is the only one who's doing a pause squat in this, or excuse me, a pause jerk in this complex, whereas, you know, everyone else is doing you know, a regular jerk, although still holding in that split position. And that pause jerk for her is really just to help her get a better feel for that, being able to drive up from that bottom position straight rather than shifting onto the balls of her feet. And so these are like the hardest thing on earth for her. She just hates them so much, but she'll appreciate them in 15 or 20 years once this is long over. Audra here. Some snatches, obviously working up to a heavy single. I've kind of alluded to it a number of times. Audra's program, totally different than everyone else's. She'll squat every single day, twice a day, so she'll do a front squat and a back squat every day. Usually she'll work up to a heavy single on both, although sometimes we'll take her up to only about 85% on at least one of those. For example, if we have a bit of a back off week, her back off weeks are like everyone else's heavy weeks, but for her it's a little bit of reduction in volume. Usually the weights are still pretty heavy, but for example, if we're squatting twice a day, I might only have her do 85% on one of the squat sessions and still heavy single on the second. And then she'll usually do some back off sets for at least one of those, usually the second one of the day. She says that her legs are like tires with leaks in them, so if she's not constantly pumping them up with squats, then they just go flat, which is quite the clever analogy. It makes perfect sense. Seems to work for her. It's way too much for a lot of people, and she can handle quite a big workload in addition to that. So sure, her being tough and working hard has never been an issue. It's kind of finding that balance, you know, how much she can actually handle physically rather than mentally, and then, you know, what actually produces the best results for her. So we have to snatch and clean and jerk frequently and pretty heavy, so she doesn't do that. This was a particularly rough week for her, a lot of work stress and stuff like that, so that's going to affect especially snatch and clean and jerk, and those will be the first thing to go, and then your strength lifts will start to go after that. Kind of precision goes first, then speed, then strength, in that order, typically is in a response to kind of outside the gym stress. Alyssa there, I think doing a set of 6 here in the back squat. So again, kind of starting this newer strength cycle. The volume's a little higher, the reps are a little higher. They're doing 5s and 6s and a lot of this stuff. Although their pulls and deadlifts and things like that are still triples. A little more of a squat emphasis at this point, and eventually that will kind of shift more into a pulling emphasis, although we'll likely not see reps more than 3 or 4 in those pulls for them, at least in this cycle. I'll do up to 5s occasionally with like snatch and clean deadlifts. Sometimes I'll do pulls for 5, but usually pulls I'll stick with 3s and 2s. But again, it kind of depends on what we're trying to accomplish at any given point. Early on, we want to kind of accumulate some volume and kind of build that base as we go. So I think this is last week. So this is that first week first real week of this cycle. So it was fairly light. Like you saw those push press plus jerks. I mean, I think that was like 70% of Alyssa's best push press. So very light for the jerks. So that exercise was more, from a programming perspective, it was more about the push presses, kind of a strength exercise. And then as just an added bonus, we're going to get a little bit of jerk technique work, stability work in there. So Alyssa doing here some muscle snatches. This is actually one of my favorite exercises. I think it's somewhat underused and often really horribly performed. So watch her elbows. They're going to move up and then never come back down. So to me, that's what defines a muscle snatch. She never drops the elbows past that high position after that high pull. So they get to about shoulder height or even higher and then continue to move up, rather than moving up and then flipping down and having this major, like a snatch grip, clean and press. Audra here finishing us out with some nice snatch pulls, which are very light for her. Looks like 67 kilos. All right, guys, like I said, share, like, post some comments, questions, all that stuff. I try to get to all those questions as soon as I can. So hope you guys are still liking these things. See ya.